Number 10. The show that reinvented itself mid-air. The 1971 Lupin III series started as one show and quietly became a completely different one, and almost nobody noticed it happening. The first 6 episodes carried a genuinely dark edge. Lupin felt dangerous rather than charming. The violence had weight. The moral landscape was murky. And the whole production hewed closely to Monkey Punch's original adult manga. This was not a children's adventure. It was something stranger and harder. Then, somewhere around episode 7, the entire show shifted registers. Warmer, funnier, more heroic. The transformation was so smooth that most viewers absorbed it without a conscious thought. If you want to know exactly who made that call and why, stick around. 2 of animation's most consequential careers were quietly launched by the answer to that question. If hidden anime history is your thing, subscribing means you get the next deep dive the day it drops, not 6 months later when the algorithm finally decides you exist.
Comes Lupin with a kick! Goal!
Number 9. He inherited the family business. The world's greatest thief isn't just good at stealing, he's genetically obligated to be. Lupin III is the official grandson of Arsène Lupin, a legendary fictional French gentleman thief created by author Maurice Leblanc in 1905. That heritage isn't decorative. It's the foundation of everything. His skills, his psychology, his need to be seen as the best, and his complicated relationship with a legacy he can never surpass and can never escape. Consider what that adds to every heist in the series. He's not a random gifted crook with quick hands. He's carrying a dynasty forward, performing for an audience of one who died before he was born. Every vault he cracks, every impossible job he walks away from, is a silent conversation with a grandfather he never got to meet, and a standard he was handed without being asked. The stakes in even the lightest caper are quietly enormous when you understand that. There's also the small matter of how that famous name almost got stripped from him entirely before the first episode aired. That story is coming, and it's a better caper than anything Lupin himself ever pulled.
I don't know what dyspeptic means, but something about them isn't right.
Number 8. The jacket means everything. If you've spent time in the Lupin III fandom, you already know the shorthand. Green jacket, red jacket, blue, pink. Each one is a different era, a different tone, a different version of the character. The 1971 series, the Green Jacket era, is the original. The foundation, the version that established what Lupin III was before the franchise knew what it wanted to be. And fans who came to the series through later installments and then went back to the Green Jacket episodes frequently describe the experience as meeting the character's older, stranger, slightly more dangerous brother. The difference isn't cosmetic. The Green Jacket era carries the DNA of the adult manga most visibly. The edges hadn't been rounded yet. The heroism wasn't guaranteed. You watched these episodes genuinely uncertain whether Lupin was going to do the right thing, and that uncertainty was the point. The jacket became shorthand for an entire aesthetic philosophy. One color, 50 years of instant recognition.
She had a bad case of the flu, so they had to send her home for the day. I'm her replacement.
Number 7. The antagonist who never wanted to be the villain. Most shows give you a villain designed to be despised. Lupin III gave you one you quietly hope never quits. Inspector Koichi Zenigata's mission is to capture Lupin III. His motivation, however, is not malice, corruption, or personal grievance. It's an almost philosophical sense of duty. A deep, generational commitment to bringing this one man to justice that drives every trap, every pursuit, and every spectacular failure. The result is a rivalry that operates outside the usual hero-villain framework. These two are professionals with completely opposing job descriptions who understand each other better than anyone else in the series. Zenigata is inventive. He is relentless. He pushes Lupin harder than any obstacle in the show. He just never quite closes the deal. What makes him genuinely unusual as an antagonist is that he's completely right within his own framework. He has the law on his side. He has the moral high ground. He simply has the worst possible opponent for a man in his profession. There's something almost tragic in that. A supremely capable detective whose entire career is defined by the one case he cannot close, against the one opponent he cannot outthink, and who shows up the next morning anyway. You love him for the commitment, and you respect him for never once blaming the game.
Oh no, guys, he's threatening us with 20 years up his butt!
Number 6. The American influence nobody expected. You'd assume the creator of Lupin III built his world out of French literature and classic crime fiction. Monkey Punch had a stranger source of inspiration. While Arsène Lupin obviously provided the character's name and aristocratic lineage, the anarchic energy running through the Lupin III manga came from somewhere entirely unexpected. American pop culture. specifically Mad Magazine and a range of American cartoons that Monkey Punch absorbed voraciously during the manga's development in the mid-1960s. That irreverent, slightly unhinged humor threaded through the series, the willingness to puncture tension with absurdity and then snap it back into genuine excitement. That's Mad Magazine working its way through a singular Japanese artistic vision. The blend of French literary tradition, Japanese manga sensibility, and American comedic anarchism produced something that didn't look or feel like anything else in animation at the time. It still doesn't. Three traditions that had no business fusing together produced one of the most distinctive creative identities in the medium's history. Number 5. The adult manga that became a family adventure. When Monkey Punch launched the Lupin III manga in 1967, he was not writing for Saturday morning television. Not even close. The source material contained mature content, darker violence, explicit material, and moral territory that broadcast standards of the 1970s were not going to allow into living rooms without significant intervention. When the 1971 anime adaptation was greenlit, the production team made a deliberate, consequential decision. Strip those elements and recalibrate the entire show for a broad audience. The gap between the source manga and the television product was unusually wide even by the standards of the era. What began as an adult anti-hero story, genuinely transgressive in places, became a comedic adventure series with just enough roguish edge to keep older viewers interested. Here's the irony. That tonal transformation is almost certainly what gave the franchise its longevity. The adult manga was brilliant, but the adventurous, accessible television version became a cultural institution that has now been running for more than 50 years. The compromise that felt like a concession turned out to be the survival mechanism.
Sure, it's the door at the end of this hall.
Number 4. The woman who plays by nobody's rules. Every great ensemble has a wild card. Fujiko Mine isn't the wild card. She's a different game entirely. While Lupin, Jigen, and Goemon operate with recognizable loyalties and at least some predictability, Fujiko operates on one principle: pure self-interest, executed with flawless precision. She's a master of disguise, manipulation, and strategic betrayal. She routinely outmaneuvers Lupin himself, and she walks away with exactly what she came for while everyone else is still reconstructing what happened. What makes her genuinely remarkable, particularly for a 1971 production, is her complete refusal to be defined by the men around her. She is not Lupin's love interest in any conventional sense. She is not anyone's sidekick. She is a fully independent operator who occasionally works alongside this crew when it happens to serve her own agenda, and not a moment longer. Fans have returned to her for decades for exactly this reason. In an era when comparable characters were frequently written as accessories to the male leads, Fujiko was writing her own contracts. She just never told anyone what was in them.
Okay, keep your shirt on. Or not.
Number 3. You were watching two different shows and never noticed. You watched the 1971 series and saw one continuous show. What you were actually watching was a visual identity in the process of rebuilding itself, frame by frame, episode by episode. Lupin's character design, along with those of Fujiko, Zenigata, Jigen, and Goemon, changed noticeably and deliberately across the run of the series. The early episodes used angular, harder designs that tracked closely to Monkey Punch's original manga artwork. Sharp lines, slightly unsettling proportions, a visual language that felt genuinely adult and strange. As new directorial voices came aboard and the tone shifted toward heroic adventure, the animation style followed. Designs became rounder, more expressive, more fluid, physically embodying the tonal change happening in the stories themselves. The show wasn't just rewriting its personality through scripts, it was rebuilding the visual identity of every major character. What this means is that the Lupin you remember from the early episodes and the Lupin from the later episodes are technically the same character rendered in two distinct artistic philosophies, and the vast majority of viewers absorbed both without ever consciously registering the difference. Either the transition was managed with masterful invisibility, or it was one of the quietest visual reinventions in early anime history. The honest answer is probably both.
The whole box office cleaned out and the lotto? No. What do we know about these robbers?
Number 2. The lawsuit that accidentally created the greatest name in anime. Before Lupin III could become a legend, he almost ceased to legally exist. The LeBlanc estate, representing the literary legacy of Maurice LeBlanc, creator of the original Arsène Lupin, challenged the use of the name for Monkey Punch's manga. The dispute was straightforward and serious. Was this new Japanese character infringing on the intellectual property of a classic French literary figure? The answer, left unresolved, could have ended the franchise before it had a single animated frame. A settlement was reached, and the resolution was elegant in a way that felt almost scripted. Monkey Punch's character would be formally established as the grandson of the original Arsène Lupin, which is precisely where the 3 comes from. The Roman numeral wasn't a stylistic flourish or a nod to American naming conventions. It was a legal instrument, a copyright solution that simultaneously resolved an intellectual property dispute and handed the character one of the most distinctive names in the medium's history. The most iconic 3 in animation exists because of a lawsuit. The backstory that gives Lupin his mythological weight, the dynasty, the inherited legacy, the impossible standard to meet. That entire dimension of the character's identity was born in a lawyer's office, not a writer's room. And because of that settlement, the lineage that Fact 9 described, the grandson carrying a dynasty forward, isn't just a character beat. It's a legal fact. The mythology and the contract are the same document. Without that settlement, the greatest thief in anime might be operating under a completely different name, carrying a completely different history. The irony is exactly what Lupin himself would appreciate. The system that tried to stop him ended up making him more interesting. Number 1. The man who saved Lupin III before anyone knew his name. Here is a sentence that should stop you completely. Lupin III almost didn't make it past episode 6. The initial run of the 1971 series was struggling. Ratings were low. The darker tone wasn't connecting with audiences the way producers had hoped. The franchise's entire future was genuinely in question. Then the production team brought in 2 directors to take over from episode 7 onward. Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata. Yes, that Hayao Miyazaki, the man who would eventually make My Neighbor Totoro, Princess Mononoke, and Spirited Away. One of the most celebrated filmmakers in the history of animation, quietly rescued Lupin III from cancellation before the world knew his name. He and Takahata shifted the tone deliberately and precisely. More heroic, more kinetic, more comedic where it needed to be. They introduced the warmth and the propulsive adventure energy that the earlier episodes had deliberately avoided. And in doing so, they turned a struggling cult curio into a show that audiences actually wanted to come back to. It found its audience almost immediately. Think carefully about what hinges on that intervention. Without it, the entire Lupin franchise collapses at episode 6. No Castle of Cagliostro, widely considered one of the finest animated films ever made. No decades of films and series that followed. No franchise that's still producing new entries today, more than 50 years later. Just 6 cult episodes and an entry in the footnotes of animation history. And for Miyazaki, no launchpad. The career that changed what animated film was capable of nearly never got its first foothold. He and Takahata were not famous yet. They were 2 talented directors handed a struggling show and told to fix it. They did, and in fixing it, they helped build the foundation that the rest of their careers would eventually stand on. Lupin III survived because of them. And in a way that's harder to measure, they survived because of Lupin III, too.
I'm here to change the linen.
Bonus fact, the pursuit that never ends and never gets old. We've established that Zenigata is an unusual antagonist. There's one more layer worth naming. His relentless pursuit of Lupin III across more than 50 years of franchise history isn't played for tragedy or pity. It's played for something rarer in storytelling, honor. His complete commitment to duty, even in the face of constant, spectacular, almost mathematically inevitable failure, makes him one of the most quietly compelling figures in the entire series. He never cheats, he never gives up, he never reconsiders the mission, never questions whether this particular target is worth his entire professional life. He just keeps setting traps that Lupin slips through, every single time. And the certainty of that outcome, paradoxically, is a large part of what makes each pursuit worth watching. Some rivalries work because the outcome is uncertain. The Zenigata and Lupin dynamic works because the outcome is completely certain, and neither of them cares. They have found, in each other, the perfect professional problem. Zenigata gets to pursue the world's greatest thief. Lupin gets to be caught by no one. The chase is the point. It always was. So, Lupin III in 1971 was a franchise that nearly died at episode 6, survived because 2 future legends walked in and rewired it mid-run, built its central character's mythology out of a copyright lawsuit, and quietly ran 2 completely different visual identities back-to-back while audiences watched both and never consciously clocked the switch. Not bad for a show about a thief in a green jacket. And not bad for a franchise that by every reasonable calculation should have ended before it ever really began. The question for the comments: which revelation lands hardest for you? That Miyazaki rescued this franchise before anyone knew his name, or that the 3 itself exists because of a legal settlement? Because those two facts together tell you almost everything about how the greatest thief in anime actually got built. Drop your answer below. Lupin would steal it before you finish typing, but Zenigata would at least give it a proper read before losing the evidence.